Welcome back to YouTube channel, where we bring the most extraordinary stories from the world of coin collecting and rare treasures that defy expectations. Today, we take a deep dive into the mysterious journey of a coin so unexpected, so seemingly ordinary, that when its true value was revealed, the entire numismatic world took a collective gasp. The 2012 5-cent coin, now valued at an astonishing $101 million, didn't just rewrite the rules of coin collecting. It sparked investigations, broke auction records, and uncovered a trail that involved one of the most bizarre stories in American mint history. It wasn't the oldest coin, it wasn't the most visually unique, but what made it a true marvel was the staggering list of circumstances, oversights, historical connections, and one unbelievable twist that turned an everyday nickel into the most valuable 5-cent piece the world has ever seen. The story begins in the fall of 2012 in Denver, Colorado, where the U.S. Mint's Denver facility was in full operation. Millions of coins were being produced daily, and quality control measures were strictly enforced to ensure every coin met the Mint's exacting standards. But among the billions of nickels minted over decades, one coin would emerge with a peculiarity that slipped past every layer of inspection. At the time, no one paid it any mind. It was just another 5-cent coin rolling off the line, indistinguishable from the rest. But what no one could have predicted was that this specific coin would one day become the center of international attention, financial controversy, and one of the biggest historical reevaluations in modern American numismatic history. The coin itself, on first glance, bore the expected design. Thomas Jefferson's profile was present on the obverse, and Monticello adorned the reverse. But it wasn't until years later that a numismatist named Eva Santiago discovered something off during a routine inventory check of circulated coins collected from automated toll machines in Arizona. Eva had a habit of going through change that came through her family-owned toll company, and on a quiet spring morning in 2017, she found a 5-cent coin that made her stop in her tracks. It had a luster unlike anything she had ever seen on a circulated coin. Not brighter, but different. A strange tone in the metal, a weight that felt slightly off in her hand, and most bizarrely, an almost imperceptible symbol on the rim of the coin that shouldn't have been there at all. She set it aside for further examination, thinking it might be a mint error, which sometimes fetch a few $100s if rare. But upon closer inspection, and after comparing it to dozens of other 2012 nickels, Eva realized she had something unique. The coin's edges were sharper than usual, the engraving unusually deep, and that mysterious symbol on the rim resembled an archaic character, something resembling an old cipher rather than a flaw. Out of curiosity and caution, she sent it to a well-known grading service for analysis. What returned was not just a certification, but a cryptic note requesting further documentation. The lab was unable to explain the composition. A second opinion from an independent metallurgical lab revealed an alloy not consistent with U.S. Mint standards. Instead of the usual cuprinical composition, 75% copper and 25% nickel, this coin contained an alloy mixture involving trace amounts of palladium and a nearly undetectable presence of osmium, a metal so rare it baffled experts. Immediately, theories swirled. Had the Mint experimented with alternative metal compositions? Was it a test strike that accidentally entered circulation? Or was something far more deliberate and hidden happening behind the scenes? For Eva, this was no longer just a quirky find. She had uncovered a coin that didn't belong. Yet it clearly bore all the signs of an official minting, except it had no precedent, no records, and no explanation. As word spread within the numismatic community, the coin was referred to as the Phantom Nickel. Coin forums lit up with speculation. Collectors searched their collections. Every 2012 nickel suddenly became a subject of scrutiny. But none matched the properties of Eva's find. It remained unique, enigmatic, and growing in mystique. In 2018, a private collector and former U.S. Mint contractor known only by the pseudonym F.H., offered Eva $1.2 million for the coin. She declined. The offer alone validated her suspicion that the coin had greater significance than she first imagined. By 2019, offers were crossing the $5 million mark, but Eva remained firm. She wanted answers, not just money. In early 2020, a retired Denver Mint supervisor named Raymond Ray McAllister came forward anonymously through a journalist who had been covering the coin saga. In a sealed letter made public by the journalist, Ray claimed that in mid-2011, a clandestine initiative had been conducted to test new alloys as part of a potential plan to reduce minting costs. Under high-security conditions, only a handful of coins were struck using alternative alloys sourced from experimental suppliers. According to Ray's letter, most of these were supposed to be melted down and logged as destroyed. But Ray hinted that during the final stage of the process, a clerical oversight resulted in several test strikes being mixed into regular circulation batches. If this was true, then Eva's coin wasn't just a mint error. It was a survivor of an experimental program lost to bureaucratic neglect. The possibility opened the floodgates. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of it, not just collectors, but historians, economists, and even a few government watchdog groups. If mint oversight led to rare and undocumented coins entering circulation, what other secrets were buried in change drawers and vending machines? In 2021, after nearly 4 years of private study, public speculation, and escalating valuations, Eva agreed to place the coin in a high-profile international auction. The event was broadcast live from Geneva, Switzerland, drawing bidders from across the globe. The final bid came from an anonymous tech mogul based in Southeast Asia, and the hammer fell at $101 million. The sale broke records. It became the highest amount ever paid for a modern American coin. But more than the price, it was the mystery, the circumstances, the timeline of overlooked details and hidden initiatives that fascinated the world. Governments began reviewing internal protocols. The U.S. Mint launched a formal review and even acknowledged in a rare press statement that the coin's existence may correspond to untraceable test runs conducted during the 2011 fiscal cycle. That was the first official hint that the story might be true. It validated Ray's letter, confirmed the fears of bureaucratic mishandling, and gave credibility to Eva's journey. The phantom nickel, as it came to be known globally, wasn't just a coin. It became a catalyst for transparency and reform. In the years following the auction, documentaries were produced, books written, and Eva became a revered figure in numismatic circles. Her disciplined refusal to sell early, her dedication to finding the truth, and her insistence on public transparency turned her into a modern symbol of integrity in collecting. The phantom nickel inspired collectors to dig deeper, to question, to reevaluate even the most seemingly worthless pieces in their possession. By 2023, the phantom nickel had gained so much attention that it was given a dedicated exhibit at the World Numismatic Congress in Berlin. The coin itself was not present, still in private hands, but its detailed 3D scans, metallurgical reports, and historical timeline were on display. People flew in from around the world just to see the data, to learn the story, to understand how one coin could transcend its denomination and become a cultural artifact. Meanwhile, rumors persisted. Ray McAllister's letter mentioned several coins that implied more than one existed. Collectors scoured coin rolls, bank bags, and old vending machines across the American West, hoping for another strike of luck. So far, none have been found. But the possibility lingers. The chase continues. The phantom nickel also inspired a new wave of amateur coin hunters. Kids who had never touched a coin album before were now searching their lunch change for anomalies. Retirees found joy and purpose hunting through jars of coins in their basements. A whole new generation of numismatists emerged, energized by the idea that life-changing discoveries could still happen in the most unassuming places. Perhaps the most remarkable part of this story isn't the $101 million price tag. It's what the coin represented. A bridge between past and future, between governmental oversight and personal curiosity, between mass production and individual value. In a world where digital currency was becoming the norm, the phantom nickel reminded people of the tangible, the historical, the overlooked physical artifacts that still carry weight, still tell stories, still change lives. And Eva, she took none of the money. After the sale, she revealed that 100% of the auction proceeds were donated to a foundation she created for education and historical preservation, funding scholarships for students interested in history, metallurgy, and archival science. Her actions elevated the story from one of fortune to one of legacy. The coin now rests in an undisclosed location, insured for far more than its auction price, and protected with layers of security typically reserved for national treasures. Next, 2015 P coin. Today, we unravel the stunning and strange saga of a 2015 P 5-cent coin, a coin minted in modern times, not ancient, not even vintage, yet so rare and wrapped in mystery that it would later be auctioned off for an unimaginable $99 million. This isn't a tale about precious metals or age-old artifacts, but about timing, circumstance, and a confluence of events so rare that it changed how collectors look at everyday currency forever. It all began in Philadelphia, where the United States Mint had been producing coins at industrial scale for generations. The P mark, signifying the Philadelphia Mint, was a standard designation. The 5-cent piece, better known as the nickel, was a workhorse of American coinage. Millions were struck every year, each bearing the face of Thomas Jefferson and the neoclassical design of his home, Monticello. The 2015 production year was no different on the surface, until one coin broke away from the rest. This particular 5-cent piece didn't find fame immediately. It didn't shimmer differently in the palm of a collector or draw attention in a bank wrapper. In fact, for months, it passed from hand to hand unnoticed. It traveled through vending machines, gas stations, pockets, and purses, living the exact same life as every other nickel in circulation. It was just another coin. Or so everyone thought. It would take a twist of fate and an odd encounter at a small diner in rural Kentucky to begin this coin's transformation from common to historic. On a stormy evening in December of 2017, a traveling geology professor named Dr. Arlen Pierce stopped at a roadside diner just outside of Bowling Green. As he waited for his coffee, he fumbled through his change and dropped a few coins on the table. One of them clinked in a way that made him pause. A duller thud, not the bright ring of the typical cupronickel alloy. He picked it up, studied it casually, and noticed what he later described as a barely visible distortion around the edge of the obverse. Dr. Pierce wasn't a coin collector, but his trained eye for minerals and metals told him something was off. The nickel seemed marginally heavier, and the surface texture had microscopic variations that didn't match others of the same year and mint mark. He slipped it into his pocket, not for its value, but out of curiosity. Later, when back at his university lab, he weighed the coin and confirmed it was off by a fraction, only a few milligrams, but enough to suggest an anomaly. Still, it wasn't until he viewed the coin under magnification that he noticed the true irregularity. Beneath Jefferson's collar, nearly invisible to the naked eye, was an engraving so faint, so delicate, that it could only have been placed with surgical precision. It wasn't part of the original die design. In fact, it didn't match anything in the Mint's official engravings. The inscription read 115C41.8. Intrigued, Dr. Pierce sent the coin to a numismatic expert at the University of Michigan. The results confirmed that not only was the coin slightly overweight, but the metal composition included traces of iridium, an extremely rare element not used in U.S. currency. More curiously, the inscription under Jefferson's collar did not appear to be damage, post-mint modification, or the result of wear. It had been applied during the striking process. When the story reached coin forums, the theories were wild. Some claimed it was a hoax, others believed it was a secret marking system, possibly an internal mint test. But the inscription was far too precise and consistent with high-level engraving methods used only in aerospace-grade etching systems. The numbers 115C41.8 soon became a puzzle for the coin world. Eventually, a retired aerospace engineer named Melinda Crass connected the numbers to a specific type of coordinate system used in government satellite calibration tests. According to her analysis, 115C41.8 pointed toward an obscure calibration point in Nevada's Black Rock Desert, home to numerous classified military experiments and high-altitude launches. This revelation caused an uproar. What was a nickel doing with encrypted geographical coordinates? And how had it made it into public circulation? The U.S. Mint was contacted, and officials publicly denied any experimental minting programs for 2015 nickels. But an internal leak from a whistleblower under the alias JW told a different story. According to JW, during late 2014 and early 2015, the Philadelphia Mint had been working with defense contractors to develop traceable currency using microetching techniques and special alloys. The objective was to plant traceable coins into hostile economies abroad to monitor currency flows and elicit trade. It was an experimental program, highly secretive. The coins were supposed to be destroyed after calibration trials. J.W. alleged that a shipment of test coins was mistakenly boxed with regular inventory due to a clerical error and distributed into public circulation. According to the whistleblower, less than 50 such coins were ever minted with embedded data, and of those, only one had made it past destruction. The coin, now known as Jefferson's Shadow, was the only known surviving piece of that experimental batch. Once this leaked information went public, the floodgates opened. Media outlets seized the story. Conspiracy theories spread. The U.S. Mint clammed up. No official confirmation came, but the evidence became overwhelming. By mid-2018, the coin was receiving offers from private collectors in excess of $20 million. However, it wasn't until 2020 that the real firestorm began. A group of cryptographers at MIT analyzed the coin using advanced laser imaging and found a second, deeply embedded layer of etching inside the nickel's core, impossible to detect without cross-sectional scans. This embedded message was alphanumeric and appeared to be an encryption key. Once decrypted, the key corresponded to a date, July 21, 2015, and a location, White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. The same day, a top-secret high-altitude test was recorded, one that involved a temporary atmospheric disruption noted by the FAA. The link was circumstantial but undeniable. Suddenly, the coin wasn't just a piece of currency. It was a relic of a classified experiment, a historical artifact from a government program whose full scope remains unknown to this day. Collectors were no longer the only ones interested. Government agencies reportedly visited universities that had handled the coin. Security officials interviewed Dr. Pierce multiple times. The coin was now evidence, artifact, anomaly, all at once. Despite mounting pressure, the coin was never seized. It remained in the hands of Dr. Pierce until early 2022, when, under an alias, he quietly consigned it to a private auction broker operating out of Geneva. There, under strict confidentiality and a staggering amount of security, the coin was put up for bid.it, sold for $99 million to an anonymous buyer whose identity remains unknown, but rumors suggest it was a private investor with ties to a European defense consortium. The sale shattered records. The 2015 P5 piece officially became the highest valued modern coin ever transacted. Its legacy didn't stop at the auction block. Following the sale, numerous institutions began lobbying the U.S. government for more transparency about experimental currency programs. The coin inspired new academic research into the convergence of currency and surveillance technology. Entire college courses were built around it. Documentaries aired in primetime slots. People who had never paid attention to the coins in their pockets suddenly saw them as possible vessels of hidden messages, unknown technology, or historical anomalies. To this day, no additional coins matching Jefferson's shadow have been found. That doesn't mean they're not out there. They may lie at the bottom of a child's piggy bank, jammed in a soda machine, or tucked in the forgotten drawers of a gas station till. The world keeps looking. Last 2008 P5 coin. Today, we explore one of the strangest and most intriguing stories to ever emerge from American coinage. Not a relic from centuries past, not forged in gold or silver, but a modest 5-cent coin minted in 2008 in Philadelphia. A coin marked with a simple P that would go on to be appraised at an astonishing $94 million. Not for its materials, not for its age, but for the unimaginable chain of events that surrounded its creation, its disappearance, and its sudden reappearance in the middle of an FBI raid. This story doesn't begin in a bank or coin collection. It starts in a laboratory. In late 2007, a group of engineers and researchers at a facility located just outside of Pittsburgh began developing a prototype for advanced conductive materials. Funded by a combination of Department of Energy grants and private defense contracts, this research focused on creating metals that could respond to electromagnetic frequencies at near-invisible levels. The goal was to integrate these materials into military aircraft, surveillance devices, and communications technologies. But like many stories that blend government funding and experimental science, what began as research soon took a strange detour. One engineer working on the project, Dr. Holden Marwick, proposed a theory that certain alloys, when struck with precise pressure, could retain embedded resonance signatures, almost like acoustic fingerprints. This idea had potential military implications, but it also had unforeseen applications. Dr. Marwick believed that microsignature technology could be embedded in items as small and ordinary as coins, allowing them to serve as both transmitters and data containers. This wasn't some sci-fi fantasy. His team actually produced several prototypes using modified nickel alloys. The key, however, was to see if the material could survive a real-world minting process, like those used at the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. That's where things got tricky. In a highly unusual move, and one never officially recorded, Dr. Marwick's team arranged for a batch of experimental planchets, coin blanks made from the new alloy, to be discreetly introduced into a standard coin production run at the Philadelphia Mint. The goal was to test the alloy's behavior under industrial minting conditions, to see if the acoustic fingerprints would remain intact after being pressed with over 50 tons of pressure. Exactly how this unauthorized experiment was allowed is still debated. Some say it was facilitated by a contact within the Mint's machinery maintenance division. Others believe there was high-level cooperation between the experimental lab and a classified sector of the Treasury. But the fact remains that in the early spring of 2008, at least 6 of these experimental blanks were run through the nickel press line and came out as ordinary-looking 5-cent pieces bearing the image of Thomas Jefferson and the letter P for Philadelphia. The intention was to quietly recover the coins immediately after minting, study the stress profiles, and then melt them down. But something went wrong. During an unscheduled line change, a small batch of coins, possibly fewer than 100, were mistakenly released with the regular production run. The experimental coins were now out in the world, indistinguishable from their ordinary counterparts, except for the tiny acoustic resonance signature embedded deep within their alloy. No one noticed at first. Even within the lab, the incident was treated as a minor loss. There was no immediate cause for panic. But 2 months later, something happened that changed everything. A Department of Defense cybersecurity unit intercepted a strange signal during a routine sweep of radio frequencies in the Northeast region. It was faint, intermittent, and entirely unrecognizable. The signature didn't match any known communications format, encryption method, or frequency band. After a thorough trace, the signal was triangulated to a coffee shop in Wilmington, Delaware. More specifically, it seemed to emanate from a small tray of coins next to the cash register. Agents conducted a silent investigation and retrieved the coins, assuming one of them had been rigged with a foreign transmitter. None were. But when a signal test was conducted, one of the nickels emitted a barely detectable ultrasonic pattern, a frequency so precise and narrow it could only have been engineered. The nickel was confiscated, analyzed, and traced back to the experimental alloy batch from the Pittsburgh lab. And just like that, the government's quiet experiment had slipped out of the lab and into the real world. Investigations were launched, files were sealed, and teams were assigned to track down any remaining coins. Most were believed to be recovered and destroyed. But not all. In 2013, 5 years after the incident, a coin collector in Oregon named Elias Darrington made a strange discovery. While sorting through a lot of 5-cent pieces he had purchased at an estate auction, he noticed one nickel felt oddly warm to the touch. It wasn't in better condition, it didn't shine more brightly, but it held an unusual weight. Slightly heavier, with a subtle metallic scent that was different from other coins. Being a meticulous collector, Elias decided to isolate the coin and have it tested for composition anomalies. He sent it to a private lab in Seattle. What came back was baffling. The nickel had an alloy composition that didn't match any known 5-cent piece. It contained a rare mix of palladium and ytterbium, elements never used in American coinage. The lab contacted authorities, and within days, Elias received a visit from federal agents asking to acquire the coin for study. But Elias refused to sell. What followed was a quiet legal standoff. The government could not prove ownership, as the coin was publicly minted and legally circulated. Elias kept it under lock and key, moving it from bank vault to bank vault every few months. He didn't sell, didn't showcase it, didn't speak publicly, until someone made him an offer too large to ignore. In late 2019, an unnamed buyer approached Elias through a middleman in Zurich and offered to buy the coin for $32 million. Elias declined. A month later, the offer was raised to $50 million. Still, he refused. Then, in March of 2020, the offer jumped to $94 million, an absurd number for a coin not made of gold or linked to a historical figure. But Elias knew something the public didn't. This coin didn't just contain experimental alloy. It was still transmitting. That's when Elias decided to take action. Not to sell, but to tell the story. He contacted a journalist known for uncovering government secrets and provided him with documentation, lab results, audio recordings of the ultrasonic signal, and even surveillance footage of men he claimed were following him. The story was published in a limited-run online journal and quickly went viral on the deep web. The mainstream press didn't pick it up, but collectors and intelligence enthusiasts did. Suddenly, the 2008 nickel became a myth, a legend, and a target. Elias vanished soon after, and his coin, believed to be stored in a safety deposit box in Brussels, was allegedly sold privately, but no records confirm this. What is known is that since 2021, multiple government agencies have investigated financial institutions in Europe for coin-based transmission systems. And despite denials, A memo leaked from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency confirmed that Coinbase signal embedding had been considered and prototyped during the late 2000s. The nickel, now known among collectors as the ghost coin, continues to be one of the most mysterious pieces of modern numismatic history. It's not a coin with historical narrative. It's not a symbol of national pride. It is, instead, a byproduct of accidental innovation, secrecy, and a failure to contain the consequences of technology.